Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and it's an honor to be speaking with a radio DJ, weather forecaster, teacher, and founder and proprietor of Grown Up Radio.
Wow,
And
that's a lot of titles, Josh.
Gary Kelley's with us. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, well, since I'm a DJ, should I bring in the microphone
Oh,
for
sure, why not?
on the DJ shot here? No, I don't need that. Well, hey, thank you for inviting me. This is really quite an honor. I watched several of your videos, and you have a lot of good people on there. I'm afraid to tell you the ratings are going to drop considerably for this show. People are going to go, "Who's this guy?" No, no.
Well, tell us about your background growing up and what got you into radio.
Uh, well, are you ready? Get the violet. Um, the year was 1969, I think. My mom's boyfriend really liked country music. My mom couldn't stand it. She liked beautiful music only for a woman, elevator dentist music,
Mhm.
which I couldn't stand. It was like the strings doing Hey Jude, all that crap. And her boyfriend loved country music. And so he turned me on to the local KSON, the little country station here in town. And I started listening and I'd hear what the disc jockeys were saying, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, we're broadcasting from our little trailer at the grand opening of this big shopping center this Friday night. It's a big deal. So I asked my mom, could we go? I'm this, skinny little pimple faced kid, little puking kid. And so we went. She went and looked at the shopping center, and I stood out in front and watched the disc jockey in the little trailer playing Buck Owens records. And I finally had enough nerve to tap on the door, and I asked him a question or two. I don't remember what it was. And he was real nice to me. He let me come in, and he was so nice to me, in fact, by answering my questions that my first job when I was 10, I used to mow yards and, a dollar, 50 cents a yard, whatever. And I had to earn my best money. So he was so nice to me that I came back every weekend for the next 2 years. What I would do, I would mow the yard, get my bus money, transfer from where I lived in Claremont in San Diego downtown, take another bus to this car dealership called Pearson Ford on the corner of Fairmont and El Cajon Boulevard. They broadcast there forever.
Wow.
I learned at an early age that if I buy the disc jockey's hamburgers and hot dogs and drinks, he'll let me run that high-end Sparta board. I got to queue up a record. And so that was, that's what exposed me to it. I was 14, made a couple connections. They used to call me Little Gary and hung around. Now, obviously, I'm not Little Gary anymore, but I am losing weight. And made friends with a guy who's pretty legendary here in San Diego named Gene Knight.
Oh, yeah.
He's worked, a lot of the huge stations in town, and he befriended me along with Shotgun Tom. And I built my own radio station when I was 14 in my closet. I literally came out of the closet when it meant something completely different. And Gene Knight came over to sit in my driveway and record me on the radio. He said, had to sit in my driveway because the signal wasn't real good. I lived on a busy street and I plugged my little Lafayette transmitter into the telephone lines.
Mhm.
And so, as long as you were on that busy street, I could go for a couple miles. But if you made her a right or a left, because this was the days where they had telephone lines,
Mhm.
power lines up above. If you made a right or left, the station was gone. So he sat in my driveway, recorded me on a cassette, left a nice note in the cassette for his boss, and he hired me off of that cassette, broadcasting from my closet. They put me on the air when I was 15.
Now, what station was that? Was that
It was called,
KCBQ?
no, it was KSEA. It was real small. It was KSON, which was the big country station in town that I hung around. It
Mhm.
was their FM station. It was their motto, their jingle, let's see, their little moniker was KSEA, less jock talk and more groovy rock.
Mm.
How's that?
So was it like a freeform FM rock and
It
roll
was a
station?
top 40 station. It was
Oh,
programmed
okay.
by Jerry Clifton, who was later on turned out to be a pretty big program director in the country. He left us to go to program WDRQ in Detroit, Michigan, and brought it to number one. And I'm this little 15-year-old kid. I was scared to death that the guy that hired me was leaving.
Mm.
And, and then I got to be experience real radio when they brought in the new guy who fired me. So I got to find out what radio was really like.
Now, tell me your memories of Jerry Clifton because I've heard the name from other guests before. What were
Yeah.
your memories of him?
Well, I was just a kid. He kind of looked like a pirate. He had long, long, skinny hair, and he kind of talked like a pirate. But he hired me. He paid me $1.65 an hour. I did afternoon drive from 2 to 6 or 3 to 7.
Hmm.
I have a picture of it. I'll see if I can get it to you. And I first started running their automation system. They were automated.
Hmm.
And so I would go in after school at 14. I wasn't old enough to drive, but my mom worked.
Hmm.
So I borrowed Gene Knight's motorcycle and I put a helmet on because I was 6'1". I looked like an adult and I would ride illegally on the freeway to the radio station. And then there was this big, probably 10 and a half inch reels. And it plays one song on one machine, one on another, and you can change the order that they go. And my job was to record the promo PSA tape that would air the next morning where they tried to make it sound live, where it,
Hmm.
it didn't. And it was me. I'm 15, and it's like little pukey kid. And I'm like, good morning, this is KSEA, and it's going to be sunny and beautiful today. Back to you, Bob. Whatever I said, you know. And I actually have a story to go with it, but I won't bore with you now. But a friend of mine came in and rewound all the tapes. And unbeknownst to him, he listened to the first 10 seconds. It was fine. Well, about 20 seconds in the tape, I made a mistake. And I kind of learned from emulating other people that I had grown up around. So Shotgun Tom has a filthy mouth, and I emulated him. So I made my mistake, and I'm like, blah 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 blah. Well, when I put it on the machine, I went past that mistake, and I triple checked it. My friend came in and rewound all the tapes so they wouldn't run out in the middle of the night, and he rewound mine. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm a little kid. I'm 15. And I hear the tape start, and I knew right away, oh my God, this
Mm.
this is not what was supposed to be on the air. And I sat down in the shower and I started crying. And
Mm.
I thought my career was over. The station was so popular, nobody ever called. And Jerry Clifton was real grumpy that day, and I thought for sure I was getting fired. But it didn't happen. So to this day, if I'm ever recording production, I don't say any bad words at all.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my little story. So then they went from tape to live. The summer of 1972, there was this new group called the Eagles on the radio, and we broadcast from the local amusement park called Belmont
Mm.
Park. And they built us a little round fishbowl, and we plugged the power of the radio station into the bumper cars. And because Belmont Park was really old and dilapidated, whenever the bumper cars would blow a fuse, we'd go off the air.
Oh.
So, and the turntables, I don't know what they were back then, but the turntable wouldn't just stop. The audio would continue, and the
Hmm.
turntable would go, and it was during Layla by Eric Clapton. It was a new song. And I thought, oh my gosh. But that was really fun. So that was the summer of 72. And I worked with Brian White, had a great career on radio. He worked there, Jerry Clifton, Tommy Sarmiento, who was a KGB for years, Gene Knight, Gene West, who was one of the original Boss Jocks. And I'm
Yeah.
just a little kid, I'm 15 and a half. I just turned 16. It's like, I can't believe that I'm here. And I was running the same little Sparta board that I ran at KSON when I was hanging around when I was 14.
Yeah. Gene West. I remember.
If anybody's still listening, isn't that a boring story?
I remember Gene West. The first time I saw a picture of him was in a scrapbook called "When Radio Was Boss" by Bill Earl, who
Oh,
was the
okay.
official Kelley historian. And the scrapbook had all these top 40 stations in LA, San Diego, San Francisco. So they
Hmm.
had Gene West on the Big 610, midnight to six. Is like, "Ugh." And that's the kind of pose he had in the
Oh,
picture
really?
was
like he was falling asleep.
You're just falling asleep,
Well,
It's
there
called
have
Mr.
been
Big
disc
Stuff.
jockeys over the years that have fallen asleep doing the all-night show. What
Oh yeah.
one worked at KSON,
Oh wow.
the country station that I worked at, and the station had a big picture window studio. It was in College Grove Shopping Center. You had to go down an escalator, and there it was, bigger than life. There was the radio station, and the disc jockey was recited to me. I didn't know who he was.
Hmm.
He was obviously not real up and not real with it. And while he was talking, he just fell asleep. And my friend had to go in and wake him up. He wouldn't answer the phone because he was
Oh, good.
asleep and he was snoring on the air. It's like, wow, you're really into your show, man. So, that was a long, long time ago, 1970. So that's what, 56 years ago. Long
And
time.
you also set up your own radio station at your high school that you went to. Tell us about how long that took and how many people helped you out there.
Well, I went to the school that the movie Fast Times Ridgemont High was made of, the Claremont High School in San Diego. There was rumor that it was a school in Los Angeles, but Cameron Crowe actually was undercover at my high school, and he was there during the time that I was there. It was released a couple of years later. I've actually never seen the whole movie from beginning to end. I remember playing. I was working in a album or AOR station, KPRI in San Diego. It was big, big, big AOR station. It was either KGB or KPRI. And I know we played several cuts off the soundtrack, but don't think I ever got past 15 minutes in the movie. But I actually didn't build a radio station at
Oh.
school. Yeah, I didn't. Really didn't like high school. I was never there. I was always at the radio station.
Mhm.
And I remember in my senior year, my grades were horrible because I was a latchkey kid since I was 7. My mom was always gone. My sister was 10 years older than I was. She was never around. And so I played music. I taught myself how to play the guitar. Started playing Beatles songs in 1963, 64, and that's what I did. I created a band when I was 8 years old, and I wanted to be a professional musician. But there was something in radio that was kind of like it. You put on
Mhm.
headphones and it sounds really good, and they sound better than I do. And so that's kind of how I got into it. So again, I didn't get to create a radio station there, but in my senior year, the principal of the high school embarrassed me in the office. He said, Mr. Rail is my real name. I got the name Gary Kelley from Shotgun Tom Kelley when I was 14. I said, if I ever get to be on the radio, I'll be Gary Kelley. So he and Gene Knight and a guy named Jim Duncan, who used to write for Radio and Records, were definitely my idols, and they took me under the wing and helped me. So the principal says, "You're spending too much time at that radio station." At the time, I was at KCBQ, the biggest station in the country. I'm doing production in the afternoon, and I work 6 to midnight, Saturday and Sunday night, real compressed, high energy. My first song is "I Want You Back" by the Jackson 5, yelling and screaming. And the station was beyond popular in town. And anyway, he told me that I spent too much time at the radio station, that I need to quit that radio station and pay attention to my grades. And I told him, well, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in your game plan. I'm gone. And I just walked out.
The
And I
principal
said,
sound like Strickland from Back to the
yeah.
Future.
And then somebody else cleaned out my locker for me. I didn't even go back to my locker. And I was a dropout for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And my mom found a school for me that I could go to that was for people that were gifted, people that wanted to work in an industry and already were, but still wanted to go to school and get credit for it. So I became the spokesman for the school. I did all their commercials to get other kids to come to the school. I made promos for them. And so they treated me really well because I was not a very good student. And then it turned out later on in life that I became a school teacher. So I always say that God has an incredible sense of humor because they never saw my GPA. I didn't even know I had one. It was pretty bad.
But who are some of your favorite disc jockeys growing up that you really idolized on the radio?
Well, it was definitely Gene Knight because he was so kind to me, and Shotgun Tom. And this Jim Duncan too was on KSON as well. They were my biggies, but my big stations in town, they were AM. It was KCBQ. It was 136 KGB Boss Radio.
Hmm.
A friend of mine, I played guitar and I used to give guitar lessons when I was 8 to other people. I was pretty good as a kid. And one of the kids that I gave lessons to was a kid named Chris Turpin. His dad was a guy named Les Turpin, who was the
Oh,
program director at 136 KGB in 1964.
wow.
And so I gave his son guitar lessons, and Les gave me a 136 KGB I'm Boss t-shirt. And it was white with red letters, and I wore that thing out until it had holes in it everywhere. I was so proud of it. And I had tried to hook up with him later on. I lost touch, obviously, over the years. And I wanted to always meet his dad because I never met him. And
Mm,
I wanted to introduce myself and say, I wanted to tell you about what this impact of your radio station and the jingles and your station and giving me that I'm Boss t-shirt, what that did to me in my life, and that I actually kind of became something. And I wanted to say thank you. And then I had heard that I think that he had passed away,
mm,
or it was very difficult to get hold of him.
yeah.
I couldn't seem to track him down. But one of my all-time favorite DJs is a guy named Bobby Ocean.
Hmm.
He was on KGB in the afternoon. I've actually hired Bobby 3 times to do promos for my streaming radio station here in San Diego, and to have Bobby Ocean on my station, it's just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh man, it was incredible. I was just beyond thrilled. I think some of my greatest memories was driving to San Francisco, heading north, and listening to Bobby on the radio in the afternoon. And I remember being there with my wife, and I didn't care if I ever got there. I
Hmm.
just wanted to listen to the radio because he was so damn good.
Yeah,
Just incredible.
I
One of the
remember
best
listening.
disc jockeys I ever heard.
I remember Jeff Sir, who was head of production at Oldies 93 KCBS-FM, where Bobby was the imaging voice,
Hmm.
said that in the early 70s, he was Bobby Ono Ocean. Then in the late 70s, he became Bobby Disco Ocean for a while,
Oh,
adopting
yeah.
these different monikers. I forgot to ask him when I interviewed him a couple of years ago, did you ever go by Bobby New Wave Ocean when, the
New
sounds of
Wave.
like Duran Duran and the Cars came about?
A couple of years ago, I had seen a list of all the different names he had had in his career, and he had some pretty creative ones.
Hmm.
He had several
Oh, yeah.
name changes over the years. And I've never met him. He was the first disc jockey I saw on TV. He was working at KGB, and it was a promo for something
Hmm.
with the local TV station. I think it was Channel 10, which I ended up working at, doing the weather for 10 years. And I thought, wow, that's what he looks like. Gee, have you ever heard this before? Gee, he doesn't look like he sounds.
No.
I thought, this is just so strange. And then, to hear it about yourself later on in life, too, you go, oh, yeah, I always had a face for radio. So,
Well,
but
most people.
Bobby Ocean definitely is Bobby, and Shotgun
Oh,
and Gene
yeah.
Hyder. They're right up there at the top, and Jim Duncan too, because I used to call him on the request line and request Buck Owens' Tall Dark Stranger, and he would always be nice to me, and he'd invite me out to the trailer. They could have easily just pushed me aside because radio was so different back then. You could actually hang around.
Hmm.
And in fact, I got fired in Los Angeles. I worked at KKDJ Kiss FM
Oh, yeah.
for Rick Carroll and later on Charlie Tuna. And I was 18, 1974, biggest station in LA, and I'm playing Bo Donaldson in the hall and the Haywoods, Who Do You Think You Are? And driving down the 10 in my little Toyota. And life is fucking great. It was like, oh my,
Uh-huh.
I'm on that station because that station would just jump out of the radio. It was
Mhm.
so you go down because back then there was hardly, you could spin down the dial or your push buttons and it would be KHJ was here or whatever, and you push KKDJ and it would be the difference would be like there's KHJ and KKDJ was way out. It would just jump out of the radio. We had a brilliant chief engineer, and I can't remember his name, but he had something to do with the development for Mattel, a lot of their games. And the guy
Mm.
was just brilliant. And so the way and I don't remember exactly, I apologize, this is a long
Oh, that's
time,
okay.
but he equalized things that somehow the equalization was done after the compressor. So if you looked at the modulation on the air, it would show that we were at, whatever, minus 6 dB, whatever,
Hmm.
but we were theoretically much louder to the human ear, but it didn't show that way on the meter. So we were fine with the FCC. So
Mm.
you would just, it just, jumped out of the radio. I'm 18 years old and I'm coming on after Humble Harv.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, and it's like, I'm never going to be late for that shift again. And he never really smiled much, but it was an honor to
No.
get to work with him. And I got to work with Charlie Tuna and Rick and Rich Brother Rob and Beaver Cleaver, Ken Levine,
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Fox, that ran 10Q. He never hired me at 10Q, but I got fired in Los Angeles because I let a kid come in the station. There was a
Oh,
kid. We
man.
were on the corner of Sunset and Vine, and I'm 18, and I think maybe by then I had turned 19. There was a kid always hanging around. He was about 12, and he was always bugging me to come up. And I'd go, I'm just the weekend guy. I can't. But I would struggle inside because that's how I did it. And
Yeah.
I thought, God, he seems nice. And so I let him come in for about 15 minutes. I don't know what time it is, 8 o'clock at night or whatever. And I was just really nervous that he was there. And I said, you better go. And instead of being bright, I just said, you can escort yourself out, being very trusting. And his character was different than mine. On the way out, he grabbed a $1,000 amplifier out of the production room
Ooh.
and took it with him as a souvenir. I didn't know anything about it. I came in the next night, and there's Charlie Tuna sitting in my chair. It was that classic story. There's somebody sitting in your chair, and fired me on the spot, and
Mm.
accused me of stealing equipment from a radio station that I work for while I'm on the air. Figure that one out.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know how it happened. I didn't know anything about it. I think I started crying. I was just a kid. And my best friend Ray and I spent 4 days. We stayed up for 4 days because I remember we put paper clips on our eyes to keep our eyes open, and we tracked the kid down. And we went to his house,
Hmm.
and I got him I said, I need you to come with us to the police station because somebody stole a piece of equipment, and I know it wasn't you, but I need you just to mention that you were there that night with me and you didn't see anything. And he goes, okay, I can do that. Well, the police convinced him to confess that he had stolen the equipment. And then the police said, and by the way, Gary and Ray, you could be charged for taking him illegally out of his house and leading him here on false pretenses. And here I got it back. So I cleared my name. I got the equipment back. The radio station never offered me my job back.
Mm.
So I learned it's another one of those radio lessons. And you can tell I'm over it, right?
Now,
So,
now, did you ever see Charlie Tuna again after that?
I did. It's funny. I was doing afternoons at B-100 in San Diego, and we had a promotion with the Ford Motor Corporation. They'd come out with a new Ford Ranger or some kind of truck, one of those where they fly people in down to the desert, and you get to drive the truck and beat the crap out of it, and then you get to do ad libs on the air. And so I'm standing in with all these jocks that I grew up listening to. I always felt like I was just a little kid. And, I had a tiny bit of notoriety because I was working for Bobby Rich doing afternoons at B-100. Who's the first person that walks up to me? Charlie Tuna. And he said, because you got to team up with somebody else. And he
Hmm.
said, hey, Gary, do you want to ride with me? And I said, and it broke my heart. I said, oh, and when I was coming up in the limousine, a guy Art Good, who does the jazz show syndicated, was kind and asked me, we hit it off in the limo, you're drinking and all
Hmm.
that stuff, and asked me if I would ride with him. And I was brokenhearted because I thought, this will be my time to actually clear the air with Charlie. Because I mentioned it to him and he said, I don't even remember that.
Wow.
He says, I don't remember firing you. And I said, well, you can imagine for me, I was 19, I was devastated because I knew that I had done something wrong that I allowed someone to come into the station, but I was proud of my character because I wanted to help another kid the way people helped me.
Oh, yeah.
And I got screwed for it. But it's okay. I came back to San Diego. Bobby Rich was on the air filling in for somebody. It was noon. I was literally in the control room with him for like 2 minutes, and the song is starting to fade. I'm sitting on the other side of the console, and he throws me the headphones. And he goes, "Gary, here, take it. Do the ID." KFMB-FM, San Diego's up there screaming and yelling, over Steely Dan or whatever it was. And then he shook my hand and he said, "You sounded great. Welcome back."
Wow.
And so I worked there for 2 months, but he didn't have a job for me.
Mm.
So I got a first radio thing I ever did a cold call for. I applied for the classic rock station KPRI, and the program director was Jesse Bullitt, who was a boss jock at KGB for years, and he hired me just from my reputation and knowing what I sounded like. So I did afternoons and mornings there for 7 years. So they went from a classic rock. They were either number one or two in the market against
Mhm.
KGB. It just depended on what day it was. They play Led Zeppelin, we play Led Zeppelin. We
Was it
excuse me.
album oriented rock, like, or was it more
Yeah,
free
no,
flowing?
no, it was very. So I've had two careers. I've had the top 40 screaming and yelling, KCBQ, KKDJ, B-100, screaming. And then it was, it's like, oh wow, man, it was you always got to pause. It's like it's like Rachel Steele, who I think is very cool. I'd love to meet her, but it's the Rachel Steele sound where you just go, yeah, it's a classic from Led Zeppelin. Is Yeah, boy, Robert Plant really, really had it together on that one. I'm Gary Kelley. This is KPRI, San Diego's best rock. I got three more coming up, including Skinner, the Stones, and Boston. Right after this, that kind of stuff. But it was
Yeah.
so. It was kind of like Carlin. It was like AM
Mhm.
FM. And because when I worked there, it was during the disco era, 1977. And I'm a prostitute. I would do anything for money because I didn't make very much at the radio station. I think they paid me 32 grand or something.
Mm.
So at night I'd go out and play disco records. So I'm on the radio saying disco sucks. And then I'm a hypocrite because at night I'm playing disco saying disco is great. Give me my $150 talent fee. And I did it all, and then I started doing high school dances in 1976. It was called the B-100 Boogie Machine, and they taught me how to do it. They had roadies and everything, lights, and I'd get my little 70 to $75 check for playing records,
Mhm.
45s, playing. I can't believe that back then they used to dance to Slow Ride by Foghat at a high school dance. That
That's
never happened today.
no.
Not in a million years. And I'd get my little 7,500 bucks, but I would do 4 or 5 a week. And they gave me the nickname Mr. Personal Appearance. It was like the commercial Mikey'll eat it. I
Mhm.
would do it. I would do anything for money because I was also the only jock on the air that liked being out with the public and loved being in front of people. I
Mm.
wasn't the guy that just sat in the headphones and was really cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So when I worked at KPRI, I was lucky. I got to do. We were the concert station,
Mhm.
and I was semi decent on stage. And I learned how to get my 30 seconds of glory. And I dressed nice. I had long hair. And I looked a lot better then. And I got to introduce. Well, just like a lot of disc jockeys.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time I'm backstage. One of the first ones. I'm introducing Eddie Money. He's the opening act, and he's got a half burnt doobie in his mouth. And he comes up to me backstage and he goes, "Hey man, you got a light?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't smoke." He goes, "Oh." And he walks away. And then so I introduced him, and then the main act was the Doobie Brothers. No, the main act was Van Halen.
Wow.
And it was really fun to be on stage, because it's at the sports arena. It's sold out. It's 12,888 people exactly, plus my comp seat. And the lights go off. Everybody starts to scream. This was the day of lighters, and
Mhm.
the spotlight comes on me. And you go, for this brief 30 seconds, I got to feel what it's like to be them for that
Mm.
because I wanted to be a childhood musician where everybody's yelling and screaming, but they were really yelling and screaming, "Get off the stage! We want to see the group." But to stand there and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, MCA recording artist Van Halen," and Eddie Van Halen is standing right next to me and goes into "You really got me." And I just thought, fuck, I can die now. This is, this is, and of course, I never got paid for them, but they always gave me
Mhm.
two really great seats. And it was just the funnest experience. I mean, I got to introduce Adam Sandler, Robin Williams, Dana Carvey, Gallagher, pretty much all the big comedians at the time, and then Kenny Loggins and the Doobies and the Beach Boys, and because I really enjoyed it, and I would always volunteer. And out of all my radio memories, other than my great experiences of working for Bobby Rich, he hired
Mhm.
me three times at B-100.
Wow.
That goes down as the greatest boss I've ever had, and a tremendous friend.
And he's got a
Uh,
book that just came out as well
he
that
did. Wait. Oh, wait, hold on.
okay,
Wait,
we're
wait a
wait.
minute. I got it. I have it right on top of my Bible.
Oh, there we go.
Here's the book.
Bobby
Not
Rich, My
very,
Life in
I,
Radio.
I'm not very far into it. So I'm not talking to him much right now because I'm not going to talk to him until I finish the book. And I'm really not that much of a reader, but I'm trying to get into it because I don't want to let him down. Because the
Yeah.
book is great. I already learned, My Life in Your Radio. I highly recommend it. Unavailable on Amazon right now, and I bought the hardcover
Oh,
because
there
he's
you go.
such he's such a dear friend. When Bobby first hired me the first time, I was 20 years old at B-100. I was working well, I just worked in Los Angeles. That's when I got fired in Los Angeles. But before that, I had worked for Rich Brother Robin at KCB and Jack McCoy at KCBQ in San Diego. And the rumor was it that Bobby Rich won't hire anybody that worked at the competition, would never hire anybody that worked at KCBQ. And I was just brokenhearted because I really wanted to work for them. They were the hot new station that came on the air in 1975. And I really wanted to work there. And I remember he took me to dinner when he hired me with Beaver Cleaver, Ken Levine.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know what trade was. And, Bobby's got like two big Bloody Marys, and we'll take the shrimp cocktail and everything. And I I was raised right, and I found the cheapest thing on the menu, which was French onion soup. It was
Mm.
$2.99. I can't stand French onion soup. I've never had it since. I tried to gag it down, but I couldn't. And they're drinking and laughing. He's just doing the schmooze because he's hiring me.
Hmm.
So that's one of my real fun memories. And then now today, I don't think we couldn't be closer. So it's a real honor for me to be friends with Bobby, and he's helped me. I have my streaming radio station. It's called Grown Up Radio San Diego. Coming up in June 21st, first day of summer, I will have been on the air for 4 years. It's a streaming station, which is nothing new, but mine's kind of different. It's kind of a hybrid oldie station. It's heavy 70s, a little bit of 80s,
Hmm.
uh, but I get really tired of Prince and Madonna. And then, 60s with, the Rascals and the Beatles and stuff
Hmm.
like that. Um, that kind of music and classic rock. So I blend them together too. I played a little bit of country, but my
Hmm.
feedback was that the country was really great for the people that love country. It wasn't great for the people that didn't.
Mm.
And I had the idea because I've done these live events as a disc jockey for 43 years. I've made far more money as a mobile DJ than I ever made on the radio. And I
Mm.
learned a long time ago that if I was willing to work hard and sacrifice my weekend evenings, I could have a nicer car and a nicer house and a boat that my boss didn't have. So I had a very strong work ethic. And so I made a lot more money as a DJ. Then, because things got better. It's like, okay, I worked on the radio today. I made $60. I did a show. I made 1,800. But I got those shows because I was the guy on the radio, right?
Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
all they all go hand in hand. But so Rich hired me at KCBQ. I worked for Rick Carroll, God bless his soul, that passed
Mhm.
away in Hollywood. And it was fun for me to say, currently in Hollywood, 63 degrees, KK. And it was like, oh my God. It was just, I remember I made $10.20 an hour, but in 1974, that was big bucks.
It
And
was.
I didn't have a broadcast endorsement on my third class. I had failed the test. So I had to pay somebody out of my own pocket to take the meter readings.
Oh, goodness
And,
gracious.
and I
Wow.
had to, good thing there was no minimum wage back then. I had to pay them
Yeah.
$4 an hour and I was only making 10. So, and
Uh,
I lived in San Diego and I commuted to Los Angeles, but I was willing to do anything to be on the radio in Los Angeles. I
That's
was
great.
still living at my mom's house. Yeah.
Well, we got about a minute left
Oh,
until the
sorry.
interview ends, but let's do this. Let's meet up again. And next time we'll talk more about your time at B-100, your second go around in Los Angeles, as well as your time on television as a meteorologist. Looking forward to that as well.
I wasn't a meteorologist. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I played one on TV. I did the weather for 17 years. I'm really
Wow.
good at saying highs in the 70s. Back to you, Bob.
And before we go, also give out your website for your radio station so we
Oh,
can listen
okay.
to it.
Thank you. It's grownupradio.com. I got a trademark. Woo. www.grown-up, because that's the way the dictionary had it. Grownupradio.com. It's 24/7. I have a guy named Jim Knight in the afternoon. He logs in. We use Station Playlist. He logs in from his house in Tucson and does the afternoon show. I do middays. So far, I don't have a morning person. Radio people aren't going to like me because all my voices, except for Bobby Rich, are all AI, and
Well, thank you.
they're really good.
All right. Well,
Really good.
looking forward to listening to that. This is Josh Jabes for the Talking Archive. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Josh.